For as long as humans have existed, we have sought one thing above all else: to live well, not merely to survive, not merely to achieve, but to experience a life that feels rich in purpose, beauty, and peace, a good life. Yet, in the modern world, this ancient pursuit has become increasingly obscured. We confuse pleasure with happiness, success with fulfillment, comfort with meaning. We chase the next milestone, the next possession, the next recognition, believing that somewhere along the way we will stumble into contentment. But the truth is, a good life does not arrive by accident. It is crafted through wisdom, reflection, and deliberate living. The good life is not about constant happiness or unbroken ease. It is about living in alignment with one's deepest values, embracing both joy and suffering as essential parts of the human journey. It is the art of cultivating a calm mind amid chaos, a compassionate heart amid division, and a sense of meaning amid the noise of modern existence. While the world around us urges us to do more, have more, and be more, the art of good living invites us to pause, to look inward, and to ask the timeless question, what truly matters? This book is an exploration of that question, a conversation between ancient philosophy and modern psychology, between timeless wisdom and practical living. It draws from the insights of thinkers like Aristotle, Epictetus, and the Buddha, but also from the lived realities of our contemporary age, where distraction, anxiety, and ambition often pull us away from ourselves. The goal here is not to preach perfection, but to rediscover simplicity, awareness, and grace in everyday life. The good life is not a luxury reserved for the few. It is a practice open to anyone who chooses to live consciously, courageously, and kindly. Chapter 1. The Philosophy of Living Well. To understand the art of good living, we must first ask what it truly means to live well. For centuries, philosophers have wrestled with this question, from the Stoics of ancient Greece to the mystics of the East. Aristotle called it eudaimonia, the flourishing of the human soul through the exercise of virtue. It was not about fleeting pleasures or material achievements, but about becoming the best version of oneself, guided by wisdom and moral integrity. To live well, in his view, was to live in accordance with one's nature, to use reason, to seek truth, to act with kindness and courage. Today, the idea of a good life is often buried under layers of convenience, entertainment, and distraction. We have confused busyness with purpose, consumption with joy, and popularity with value. In chasing external validation, we have neglected the inner harmony that once defined the essence of being human. The world tells us that success is measured by what we own, how we appear, or how fast we move. Yet the quiet truth remains. A life of meaning cannot be measured, only felt. To live well is to seek balance between ambition and contentment, between solitude and connection, between reason and emotion. It is to cultivate a sense of awareness that allows us to see beyond surface pleasures and recognize the quiet, enduring satisfaction that comes from living with integrity. The good life is not something we acquire. It is something we create each day in how we think, how we act, and how we respond to the world around us. Philosophy, in its truest form, is not an abstract study of words, but a manual for living. The Stoics did not write to impress, but to instruct. They believed that wisdom was a discipline, a lifelong effort to bring thought and action into harmony. Marcus Aurelius wrote not for others but for himself, reminders to remain calm amid chaos, humble amid praise, and patient amid pain. These lessons are as relevant now as they were 2,000 years ago. The essence of good living lies in this self-awareness, to understand the nature of life, to accept what cannot be changed, and to focus one's energy on what can. In a world that constantly pulls our attention outward, living well is an act of quiet rebellion. It demands that we slow down, that we choose reflection over reaction, substance over appearance. The art of good life begins not with changing the world, but with changing the way we see it. Once the mind learns to rest in clarity, and the heart learns to act with purpose, even the simplest life becomes a masterpiece. Chapter 2. The Inner Compass, Knowing Yourself. The journey toward a good life begins with a single lifelong task, knowing oneself. The ancient inscription at the Temple of Delphi read, "Know thyself." These two words have echoed through centuries of human thought, reminding us that self-knowledge is not merely the beginning of wisdom, but its very essence. Yet, in our age of noise and distraction, we often know everything about the world except ourselves. We scroll endlessly through other people's lives, opinions, and dreams, while neglecting the quiet inner space where our own truth resides. To know yourself is to face both the light and the shadow within you. It is not an exercise in self-flattery, but in honesty. It means looking deeply at what drives you, your fears, desires, hopes, and insecurities, and asking whether they serve your higher self or enslave you to habit. Most people move through life reacting rather than reflecting, chasing what they think they want without ever questioning why. True self-knowledge, however, is an act of courage. It demands stillness, solitude, and a willingness to listen. The world constantly tells us who we should be. It offers endless labels: successful, attractive, important, and measures worth by how well we fit them. But when we live by borrowed definitions, we lose our authenticity. Knowing yourself means peeling away these layers of expectation until only what is real remains. It is not about inventing a new identity, but rediscovering the one that has always been there, beneath the noise and performance. There are moments when silence becomes a mirror, and in that mirror the self appears, unguarded, vulnerable, yet whole. This is why solitude is not loneliness. It is the sacred space where the soul can breathe. In silence, we begin to notice the rhythm of our own mind, the patterns of thought that shape our emotions, and the quiet voice of intuition that so often gets drowned out by the world's demands. To know yourself is to build a relationship with that voice and to trust it, even when it leads you away from comfort and toward growth. The person who understands themselves does not need constant validation. They act from conviction rather than confusion. They know what to pursue and, just as importantly, what to let go of. Their decisions are guided not by impulse, but by clarity. This inner compass, shaped by reflection and refined by experience, becomes the foundation of the good life. It does not point toward wealth or fame, but toward harmony, meaning, and peace of mind. When you truly know yourself, you stop competing with others because you no longer measure life in their terms. You realize that your journey is not a race, but a path unfolding at its own pace. You learn to accept your imperfections, to celebrate your uniqueness, and to live with a quiet dignity that does not depend on the approval of anyone else. Self-knowledge is not an end, but a lifelong practice, a gentle returning to what is true. And once you begin to live from that truth, everything else, happiness, success, love, follows naturally, like a shadow following light. Chapter 3. The Illusion of Control. One of the great paradoxes of life is that the more we try to control it, the more it slips through our fingers. Human beings have an insatiable desire for certainty. We plan, we predict, we strive to master every variable in hopes of avoiding discomfort, loss, or failure. Yet life, in its quiet wisdom, resists control. It reminds us again and again that we can influence much, but possess nothing, not the future, not the opinions of others, not even the fleeting rhythm of our own heartbeat. The Stoic philosophers understood this truth well. They divided the world into two realms: what is within our control and what is not. Within our control lie our thoughts, our choices, and our actions. Beyond it lie everything else: fortune, fate, and the behavior of others. Peace, they said, comes from placing our energy where it belongs. Most suffering arises not from the events themselves, but from our futile resistance to them. We rage against the weather, against loss, against the passage of time, as though the universe owed us stability. But the world was never meant to be bent to our will. It was meant to be understood and accepted with grace. To accept what we cannot change is not resignation, but liberation. It frees us from the tyranny of expectations. When we stop trying to control outcomes, we begin to live more lightly. The mind grows calm, the heart steady. We start to see that the world unfolds according to its own rhythm, not ours, and that there is wisdom in trusting that rhythm. Like a sailor adjusting the sails rather than commanding the wind, we learn to navigate life as it comes, shaping our responses rather than demanding perfection from the world. In truth, control is often a mask for fear, the fear of uncertainty, the fear of failure, the fear of letting go. But the moment we admit that life is uncertain by nature, we stop fighting against reality and start flowing with it. That is when true strength appears, not the strength to dominate circumstances, but the strength to remain centered within them. The art of good living lies not in mastering life, but in mastering oneself. When we let go of the illusion of control, we rediscover serenity. We begin to respond instead of react, to trust instead of demand, to accept instead of resist. We see that every event, pleasant or painful, carries within it a lesson for those willing to listen. The wise do not try to make life easier. They try to make themselves stronger, more peaceful, and more attuned to what is real. To live well, then, is to live with humility before the vastness of existence. It is to recognize that we are part of a larger pattern, fragile yet resilient, limited yet capable of infinite growth. The illusion of control dissolves when we understand that what truly matters is not what happens to us, but how we choose to meet it. In that choice lies our freedom, our dignity, and ultimately, the quiet beauty of the good life. Chapter 4. The Power of Perspective. Life, in its essence, is neutral. It is neither cruel nor kind. It simply unfolds. What gives it color and meaning is the lens through which we see it. Two people may experience the same event, a failure, a loss, a disappointment, yet one crumbles while the other grows stronger. The difference lies not in circumstance, but in perception. Our thoughts are the architects of our experience. They shape not only how we feel, but who we become. In this way, the mind is both our greatest ally and our most subtle enemy. Perspective is the art of seeing clearly, of viewing reality without distortion or despair. When we change the way we see things, the things we see truly change. A setback becomes a teacher, pain becomes a passage, and uncertainty becomes a chance to begin again. This is not naive optimism, but practical wisdom. It does not deny the storm, but teaches us to sail through it with steadier hands. When we train the mind to look for meaning rather than misery, we begin to uncover the hidden gifts buried inside even our most difficult moments. Every thought we entertain plants a seed in the garden of our mind. When we water thoughts of gratitude, patience, and understanding, peace grows. When we nourish resentment, fear, or envy, suffering takes root. Life will always give us both sunlight and shadow, but it is our perspective that decides which will dominate. A wise person learns to step back, to observe their thoughts as clouds passing through the sky, and to remember that the sky itself, vast, calm, and boundless, is untouched by the weather. There is an extraordinary freedom that comes from realizing that we do not have to believe everything we think. The mind can deceive us with its judgments and expectations. It can magnify small troubles into unbearable burdens. Yet once we learn to watch our thoughts instead of being carried away by them, we reclaim our power. The practice of awareness allows us to see events as they are, not as we wish or fear them to be. This clarity transforms how we live. To cultivate perspective is to train ourselves to ask better questions. Instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" we can ask, "What can this teach me?" Instead of, "What have I lost?" we can ask, "What remains?" Life does not promise fairness, but it offers constant opportunities for wisdom. Every difficulty carries within it the seed of insight, waiting for the right gaze to find it. Perspective does not eliminate pain, but it gives pain a purpose. It allows us to suffer consciously, to use adversity as a mirror rather than a prison. When we learn to see life through the lens of growth, even hardship becomes sacred. The person who has suffered deeply yet kept their heart open is not broken, but transformed. Their eyes hold a quiet strength, their words a soft compassion, and their presence a calmness that can only come from having seen life clearly. In the end, perspective is the bridge between chaos and peace. It is what allows us to meet the world not with despair, but with dignity. When we can look upon the changing tides of life and whisper, "This too shall pass," we are no longer prisoners of circumstance. We become participants in the unfolding of existence, not controlling it, not resisting it, but seeing it as it is. From that seeing, wisdom is born, and with wisdom, the art of good living begins to take form. Chapter 5. The Science of Contentment. Human beings are restless creatures. We are constantly reaching for something just beyond our grasp, a new possession, a better job, a different circumstance, another tomorrow. For a brief moment, when desire is fulfilled, we feel a flicker of joy. But soon, like sand slipping through fingers, it fades. The mind moves on to its next craving, convinced that happiness lies somewhere ahead. This endless chase is the rhythm of modern life, yet it leaves us perpetually unsatisfied. The truth is that pleasure and contentment are not the same. Pleasure is fleeting and external. Contentment is steady and inward. To master the art of good living, we must learn to find peace not in what we have, but in how we see. Psychologists call this phenomenon hedonic adaptation, the tendency of humans to quickly return to a baseline level of happiness despite positive or negative changes in their lives. The new car loses its thrill, the promotion becomes routine, the dream house becomes simply the place we live. Our expectations expand faster than our gratitude, and so we remain trapped in a cycle of wanting. But contentment is not about settling for less. It is about realizing that enough has always been within us. The mind's hunger for more is not evil, but unexamined desire is a thief of peace. When we learn to pause and appreciate the present, life takes on a different texture. Gratitude becomes a form of intelligence, a way of seeing abundance where others see lack. Even in the smallest moments, a warm cup of tea, the sound of rain, a gentle conversation, we can find a quiet joy that no wealth can buy. Contentment grows when we stop measuring our lives against others and start noticing the simple miracles that fill our own. In truth, happiness does not come from the accumulation of experiences, but from the depth with which we live them. A walk in the morning can bring more joy than an expensive vacation if we are fully present. To be content is to stop dividing life into good and bad moments and to start experiencing it as one unbroken flow. When we surrender the belief that something is missing, we begin to understand that nothing ever was. Simplicity is the secret doorway to contentment. The more we clutter our lives, with possessions, distractions, or ambitions, the harder it becomes to hear the gentle hum of peace beneath the noise. The wise live with intention, not excess. They choose quality over quantity, meaning over movement. They understand that true luxury is time to think, to rest, to love, to simply be. Contentment is not complacency. It is the balance between ambition and appreciation, the ability to strive for better while being grateful for now. The good life is not found by renouncing desire, but by mastering it, by choosing desires that nourish the soul rather than exhaust it. When our wants align with our values, the heart grows still. Contentment is not a gift from the world, but a skill of the mind. It is cultivated through awareness, gratitude, and restraint. It is the quiet understanding that joy is not somewhere else, waiting to be found, but here, in this breath, in this moment, in the very act of being alive. Once we taste that stillness, the frantic pursuit of more loses its grip, and the art of good life becomes not a philosophy, but a lived experience. Chapter 6. The Art of Presence. In every age, human beings have longed for presence, the simple ability to be here, fully, without distraction. Yet in our time, presence has become a rare art. The world has grown louder, faster, more demanding. Our attention, once a sacred gift, is now pulled in 100 directions at once. We live surrounded by noise and novelty, yet we have forgotten how to be still. We scroll endlessly, speak without listening, and move without seeing. The present moment, the only moment that truly exists, slips away while we chase echoes of the past or shadows of the future. To live without presence is to live half alive. It is to exist always elsewhere, replaying what has been or anticipating what will come, while the richness of life unfolds unseen before us. The art of presence is not merely about slowing down, but about awakening. It is the realization that everything we seek, peace, love, joy, meaning, is already here, waiting for our awareness to touch it. The mind loves to wander, but the soul longs to arrive. Presence is a practice, not a possession. It begins with attention, the gentle returning of the mind to what is now. When we listen without judgment, eat without hurry, or walk without destination, we begin to taste the quiet fullness of being. Even the most ordinary acts, washing a dish, feeling the wind on the face, hearing a bird call, become gateways to peace when experienced with presence. Life ceases to be a blur of events and becomes instead a living meditation, vivid and complete in every instant. The loss of presence is one of the greatest sources of modern suffering. We mistake stimulation for fulfillment, speed for progress, and distraction for rest. We are rarely where we are. Our bodies sit in one place while our minds race miles ahead. But presence heals this division. It gathers the scattered pieces of our attention and brings them home. In presence, we remember who we are, not our roles, our histories, or our ambitions, but the silent awareness behind them all. To be present is also to make peace with time. We spend much of our lives either regretting what has passed or fearing what lies ahead. Yet both are illusions. The past no longer exists. The future has not yet come. The only real moment is now, and when we inhabit it fully, the anxiety of time dissolves. Presence turns life from a series of destinations into a continuous unfolding. The journey itself becomes the home. Presence is love. It is the act of giving our full attention to what we value, to a person, a task, a breath, a moment. To love someone is to be present with them. To love life is to be present with it. The good life, then, is not hidden in distant goals or abstract ideals, but in this simple, radiant awareness of the now. When we learn to rest in that awareness, time slows, gratitude deepens, and even the smallest moment becomes infinite. Chapter 7. Values as the backbone of the good life. Every good life rests upon a foundation, and that foundation is built of values. Without values, life drifts like a ship without a compass, tossed by every current of opinion, every wind of circumstance. Values give shape to our choices, strength to our character, and direction to our days. They are not rules imposed by society, but principles discovered within the quiet depths of conscience. When our actions align with our values, there is harmony. When they do not, there is conflict. The good life is not one of constant pleasure or success, but one lived in inner coherence, where what we think, say, and do form a single, honest whole. In the modern world, many have forgotten this truth. We are encouraged to chase goals, not principles, appearances, not authenticity. But a life built on external achievements alone is like a house made of glass, dazzling in sunlight, fragile in storm. Without a moral backbone, even the most impressive existence can collapse into emptiness. True peace is found not in what we own or accomplish, but in knowing that we have lived in accordance with what we hold sacred. To discover one's values is a process of listening. It begins when we stop asking, "What will make me successful?" and start asking, "What is right?" and "What feels true to the deepest part of me?" For some, the guiding light may be compassion, for others, integrity, truth, or freedom. There is no single formula, only the honesty to follow what is just, even when it is difficult. When we live by values, we gain something the world cannot give or take away: self-respect. Integrity is the silent virtue that anchors the soul. It is the refusal to betray what we know to be true, even when no one is watching. It demands courage, the courage to be disliked, to stand apart, to endure misunderstanding in the name of what is right. Yet, paradoxically, it also brings freedom. The person who acts from integrity no longer needs to pretend, to impress, or to hide. Their peace comes not from approval, but from authenticity. Values also simplify life. When we know what truly matters, we no longer waste time chasing what doesn't. The noise of the world begins to fade, and decisions become clearer. We stop measuring ourselves by shifting standards and start living by timeless ones. A life guided by values may not always be easy, but it is always grounded. It provides a steady rhythm in a world of constant change, a moral heartbeat that keeps us true when everything else feels uncertain. Ultimately, values are the architecture of meaning. They are what transform existence into purpose, motion into direction, and effort into dignity. The good life is not defined by comfort or convenience, but by character, the invisible strength that allows us to face the world with grace and stand firm in truth. When values guide us, life gains depth. Even pain becomes purposeful, even failure becomes noble, and in the quiet satisfaction of living rightly, we find the most enduring joy of all, the peace of a clear conscience and a heart at rest. Chapter 8. The Work of Meaning. To live well is to live with meaning. Without it, even the most comfortable life feels hollow, and with it, even hardship takes on purpose. Meaning is the invisible thread that weaves together all our experiences, joy and sorrow, victory and defeat, into a coherent story. It does not arrive as a gift from fate. It is something we build, patiently, through the way we live, the work we do, and the love we give. Every human being, no matter how ordinary their circumstances, has the capacity to create meaning. It is not the privilege of poets or philosophers, but the birthright of all who are willing to live consciously. Work is one of the primary ways we shape that meaning. Yet too often we mistake it for mere labor, a transaction of effort for reward, time for money. But work, at its highest, is not just about survival or ambition, it is about expression. It is the process through which we leave an imprint on the world, however small. A carpenter shaping wood, a teacher guiding a child, a nurse comforting the sick, all are engaged in acts that, when done with heart and purpose, become sacred. The value of work lies not only in what it produces, but in what it awakens within us. Modern culture has taught us to see work primarily as a means to an end, a ladder to climb, a race to win. But this view reduces a noble pursuit to a burden. When we work only for reward, we lose touch with the quiet dignity of effort itself. Meaningful work is not measured by prestige or profit, but by the degree of presence and intention we bring to it. The humblest task, done with devotion, carries more light than the grandest one done in haste or pride. To find meaning in work, we must ask deeper questions. Not, what will I gain, but what will I give, and what will this make of me? The good life is less about achieving greatness than about living with purpose. Purpose gives direction to our energy and coherence to our days. It transforms even ordinary moments into acts of significance. It allows us to endure suffering because we know why we endure it. A person who has a why, as Viktor Frankl once wrote, can bear almost any how. Meaning is not static. It evolves as we do. What once gave us purpose may fade, and something new may take its place. That is the rhythm of growth. The important thing is to remain awake, to keep asking, does this still nourish my soul? The work of meaning is never finished, because life itself is always changing. But in the continual act of seeking, we remain alive to the wonder of existence. When we find meaning, life no longer feels like a series of disconnected events. Everything becomes part of a larger pattern, and even pain acquires dignity. The artist who pours truth into their canvas, the parent who sacrifices in love, the thinker who searches for understanding, all are participating in the same sacred endeavor, to turn chaos into order, experience into wisdom, and life into something worth remembering. In the end, meaning is not something we find out there. It grows from within. It arises when what we do, what we value, and who we are fall into alignment. When we give our work the fullness of our heart and live for something beyond ourselves, we become more than just doers. We become creators of life's deepest beauty. And in that creation, the art of the good life quietly unfolds. Chapter 9. The Practice of Compassion. The good life cannot be lived in isolation. To live well is not only to know oneself and to act with integrity, but also to recognize the shared heartbeat of humanity that binds all people together. Compassion is the bridge between self and world, the silent current of empathy that flows beneath every act of kindness, every moment of understanding. It is not weakness, as some fear, but the highest expression of strength, the courage to feel deeply in a world that often encourages indifference. Compassion begins with the simple realization that every person we meet is carrying an unseen story. Behind each smile may lie grief. Behind each act of anger, a hidden pain. When we learn to see others not through the lens of judgment, but through the eyes of empathy, we awaken something noble within ourselves. The heart softens, the walls between us dissolve, and life becomes richer, not because it grows easier, but because it grows more meaningful. In a world driven by competition and comparison, compassion is a quiet rebellion. It reminds us that true fulfillment does not come from getting ahead of others, but from lifting them up. The paradox of the good life is that happiness grows when shared. When we comfort a friend, forgive an enemy, or give without expectation, we expand the boundaries of our own joy. The act of giving becomes a form of receiving, for in helping others, we remind ourselves of our own humanity. To practice compassion is not to be sentimental, it is to be awake. It is to understand that suffering is universal and that our response to it defines who we are. Sometimes compassion means gentle words, sometimes it means silent presence. It may call us to act, or it may call us simply to listen. But it always requires that we put aside the smallness of ego and open ourselves to the vastness of connection. The practice of compassion also extends inward. Many people find it easier to be kind to others than to themselves. Yet without self-compassion, the heart eventually grows weary. To forgive oneself, for mistakes made, for chances missed, for being imperfect, is an act of healing. When we treat ourselves with gentleness, we no longer demand perfection from life or from others. We become more patient, more understanding, more human. Compassion does not erase pain, but it transforms it. It turns personal suffering into wisdom and shared suffering into solidarity. It helps us to see that beneath the surface differences of culture, language, and belief, all beings seek the same simple things: love, safety, and peace. To live with compassion is to live in harmony with this truth. It is to recognize that life is not a contest, but a collaboration, not a possession, but a shared miracle. In the quiet practice of compassion, the soul finds rest. We stop trying to conquer the world and begin to care for it. We understand that greatness lies not in domination, but in devotion, in the daily, humble acts that make life kinder for someone else. And in those acts, small as they may seem, we find the essence of what it means to live well, to move through the world with an open heart, leaving behind a trace of gentleness wherever we go. Chapter 10. The Discipline of Balance. To live well is to live in balance. Yet balance is perhaps the most difficult art of all, for life constantly pulls us toward extremes. We rush between doing too much and doing too little, between caring too deeply and caring not at all, between the desire for freedom and the need for belonging. The world whispers that more is always better, more success, more possessions, more excitement. But wisdom whispers otherwise. It reminds us that enough is a sacred word, and that peace often hides not in abundance, but in moderation. Balance is not a static state, but a living rhythm. It shifts and sways like the ocean tide, requiring constant attention and gentle correction. Just as a dancer finds equilibrium through motion, we too find stability not by standing still, but by learning to move gracefully with life's changes. Some days demand effort, others rest. Some moments call for ambition, others for surrender. The discipline of balance lies in knowing which is which, in sensing when to act and when to let go. The ancients spoke of the golden mean, the middle path between excess and deficiency. It is the wisdom of the temperate heart, strong yet kind, disciplined yet flexible. When we live without balance, even good things can harm us. Work becomes obsession. Love becomes dependency. Solitude becomes isolation. But when balance guides us, everything finds its proper place. The mind grows clear, the heart steady, the spirit calm. In our modern age, imbalance has become a kind of norm. We are surrounded by noise, motion, and constant urgency. We glorify exhaustion and mistake burnout for dedication. We fill every silence, fearing what it might reveal. Yet the good life requires stillness as much as movement. Rest is not laziness. It is the soil from which vitality grows. Without pause, we lose perspective. Without quiet, we lose ourselves. To cultivate balance, we must learn the art of boundaries, the ability to say no, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Every yes that matters is supported by 100 quiet refusals. We cannot live deeply if we live for everything. Balance means honoring our limits while nurturing our potential. It means realizing that time and energy are finite and choosing carefully where to place them. Balance is also the harmony between self and others, between the inner world and the outer. Too much inward focus becomes detachment. Too much outward striving becomes distraction. We need both introspection and connection, solitude and community, thought and action. Each complements the other like night and day, forming the full rhythm of life. Ultimately, balance is not perfection. It is presence. It is the gentle awareness of where we are leaning and the willingness to return to center. The wise do not chase extremes. They live from the quiet middle, where joy is steady and peace endures. To live in balance is to dance with life rather than wrestle it, to move with grace through its ups and downs, trusting that harmony is not found at the edges, but at the heart. When we learn to balance our desires with gratitude, our work with rest, and our ambition with humility, we begin to glimpse the serenity that defines the good life. for in that calm rhythm, between striving and surrender, noise and silence, the soul discovers its true music. Chapter 11. Freedom and Detachment. Freedom is the heartbeat of the good life. It is what every soul quietly longs for, the ability to live true to oneself, unchained by fear, untouched by the constant pull of the world's expectations. Yet, most of what we call freedom is only a shadow of it. We imagine that freedom means doing whatever we want, whenever we want, but such liberty often leads not to peace, but to chaos. True freedom is not the absence of restraint. It is the mastery of desire. It is found not in escaping life's responsibilities, but in meeting them without being enslaved by them. Detachment is the companion of this deeper freedom. To be detached is not to withdraw from life, but to move through it without clinging. It is the art of participation without possession, of love without control. The world teaches us to hold tightly, to cling to people, success, and comfort as though they could secure our happiness. But everything in life, from beauty to sorrow, is transient. The tighter we grasp, the more we suffer when things inevitably change. Detachment, therefore, is not coldness, it is clarity. It allows us to love fully, to give completely, while knowing that nothing truly belongs to us, not even time. Freedom and detachment are born from understanding. When we see that all things arise and pass, we stop resisting the flow of life. The wise do not mourn the impermanence of things. They see it as what makes life precious. A sunset is beautiful precisely because it ends. A moment is sacred because it cannot be repeated. The person who lives with this awareness stops demanding that life be different and begins to savor it as it is. In that acceptance lies the purest form of liberation. Modern life, however, confuses freedom with indulgence. We chase countless choices, mistaking variety for meaning. But too many choices can imprison rather than free us. We become overwhelmed by the fear of missing out, enslaved by comparison, and exhausted by constant wanting. The paradox is that the more we try to possess, the less we truly enjoy. Simplicity, on the other hand, brings lightness. To own less, to need less, to depend less. These are quiet revolutions that restore freedom to the soul. Inner freedom begins when we stop seeking validation. As long as our worth depends on the approval of others, we remain bound by invisible chains. True independence is born the moment we no longer need to be seen to feel real, no longer need to be admired to feel enough. This freedom cannot be granted by society or taken away by circumstance. It arises from self-understanding. It is the serenity of the person who walks their path in silence, guided not by applause, but by conscience. To live with freedom and detachment is to be light in spirit. It does not mean indifference or passivity, but rather a calm engagement with life. To give your best, to love deeply, to care sincerely, and yet to remain at peace when outcomes differ from your hopes. It is the ability to hold joy without gripping it, to face pain without collapsing into it. Detachment gives us space to breathe, to respond instead of react, to live with grace instead of grasping. In the end, freedom is not something we acquire, but something we remember. It has always been within us, buried beneath layers of fear, habit, and attachment. When we strip away those layers, what remains is simplicity, clarity, and peace. That is the freedom of the wise, not the freedom to escape life, but to embrace it fully, knowing that nothing in it can truly bind the soul. Chapter 12. The Rhythm of Life. Life moves in rhythms. There is a pulse to existence, a quiet music that carries everything from the rise and fall of tides to the beating of the human heart. To live well is to move in harmony with that rhythm, to understand that there is a time to act and a time to rest, a time to speak and a time to listen, a time to hold on and a time to let go. Modern life, however, has taught us to resist this natural flow. We live in constant acceleration, trying to stretch every minute into productivity as if rest were a sin and stillness a waste. But when we push against life's rhythm, we lose touch with its wisdom. The seasons themselves remind us of this truth. Nature does not bloom endlessly. There is a time for growth and a time for retreat, a time for abundance and a time for quiet renewal. Yet we often expect our lives to remain in a perpetual spring, full of motion and creation. When winter arrives, in the form of loss, fatigue, or stillness, we panic, forgetting that even the trees must stand bare for a while before they can flower again. To live well is to accept that every season of life, even the barren ones, serves a purpose. Growth requires rest, and rest requires trust. The rhythm of life also exists within each day. There are hours when the mind is sharp and active, and hours when it longs to wander or dream. When we learn to honor these natural patterns instead of fighting them, we find that effort becomes ease. Work feels less like strain and more like flow. Even creativity, that elusive spark, is not something to be forced, but something to be invited, like a tide that returns when the shore is patient enough to wait. Many of our struggles come from forgetting that we are not machines. We were not designed for endless output or constant stimulation. The heart needs moments of quiet to recalibrate its strength, and the mind needs stillness to remember what matters. Yet, in our restlessness, we fill every silence with noise, every pause with activity. We mistake motion for meaning, productivity for purpose. But the good life is not found in how much we do. It is found in how deeply we live, and depth cannot exist without pause. Living in rhythm means learning to listen, not just to the outer world, but to the inner one. There are times when the soul whispers for solitude, and times when it longs for connection. There are moments to dream, and moments to act. When we ignore these subtle cues, we live out of sync with ourselves. But when we listen and follow their gentle guidance, life begins to flow again. The struggles feel lighter, the choices clearer, and even the smallest joys seem more vivid. Time itself is a rhythm, fleeting, cyclical, and eternal all at once. When we fight against it, we feel anxious, always fearing that we are behind or running out. But when we move with it, time becomes a companion instead of a burden. Each moment arrives, blooms, and fades, and we learn to welcome it all, not with grasping or regret, but with gratitude. In truth, the good life is not a race toward the future, but a dance with the present. To live in rhythm is to let life breathe through you, to give when the world calls for your energy, and to rest when it calls for your stillness. In that balance, in that ebb and flow, we find serenity. For life's rhythm is not something to control or conquer, it is something to feel, to honor, and to trust. When we do, we discover that peace is not the absence of motion, but the grace of moving in time with the music of existence itself. Chapter 13. Designing Your Good Life. A good life does not simply happen, it is designed slowly and thoughtfully through the choices we make each day. It is not an accident of fortune or circumstance, but a deliberate creation shaped by awareness and intention. We cannot control every event that befalls us, but we can shape the spirit in which we meet them. Just as an artist shapes clay or a gardener tends to soil, we too can cultivate the conditions that allow the best parts of ourselves to bloom. Designing one's life is not about perfection. It is about alignment, bringing our actions into harmony with our deepest values and highest aspirations. The process begins with clarity. Most people live reactively, moved by habit, desire, or obligation. They wake, work, and rest according to patterns they never consciously chose. To design your life means to pause and ask, what do I truly want this brief existence to stand for? What kind of person do I wish to become? What kind of peace do I wish to feel? These questions are not answered in an afternoon. They unfold through reflection, silence, and experience. But once we begin asking them sincerely, life starts to take on direction. Rituals give structure to intention. They are the small, repeated acts that bring the invisible into form. A few minutes of gratitude in the morning, a quiet walk in the evening, time set aside for reading, reflection, or rest. These simple practices anchor the spirit. They remind us, amid the chaos of the world, that peace is a choice renewed daily. A well-designed life is built not from grand gestures, but from humble rhythms that nourish clarity and calm. In designing our lives, we must also learn to simplify. Complexity often masquerades as success, but it only clutters the soul. The more we chase, the less we savor. A life overflowing with commitments and possessions leaves no space for wonder. The art of simplicity is the art of editing, removing what is unnecessary so that what is essential can shine. When we strip away distractions, we rediscover the quiet joy of living deliberately. Every object, every relationship, every pursuit should serve a purpose or bring beauty to the heart. Gratitude is the foundation upon which all good design rests. Without gratitude, life becomes a series of demands. With it, life becomes a continuous gift. The person who lives in gratitude moves through the world with open eyes, recognizing the extraordinary in the ordinary. They find meaning in the mundane, the taste of food, the warmth of light, the kindness of strangers. Gratitude turns existence into art. It transforms moments into treasures. Designing a good life also requires courage, the courage to live differently, to follow your own rhythm even when it diverges from the crowd's. The world will always have its opinions about how one should live, what one should desire, and what one should fear. But the life designed from within must be guided by inner wisdom, not outer pressure. It takes strength to say no to what glitters and yes to what is true. Yet in that choice lies liberation. The good life is not static, it evolves as we do. There will be times when what once brought joy now feels heavy, when old dreams fade and new ones emerge. To design life well is to remain flexible, to allow change without losing essence, to adapt without betraying values. Like a river, we must keep flowing, reshaping our course while remaining true to our source. Designing your life means learning to live with intention rather than inertia. It means waking each morning and choosing, consciously, gently, courageously, how you will show up to the miracle of existence. A well-lived life is not measured by the number of days we fill, but by the depth of presence we bring to each one. When the outer world reflects the inner truth, when our days carry the rhythm of our hearts, we find that the good life is not a distant dream, but a living design, shaped one quiet moment at a time. Chapter 14. The Courage to Live Differently. To live differently in a world that moves in one direction requires courage. The pull of conformity is strong, the desire to belong even stronger. From childhood, we are taught what success should look like, what happiness should mean, what paths are worth following. Yet the quiet truth is that no one can walk your path but you. The art of the good life often begins the moment you dare to step away from the noise, the moment you choose authenticity over approval, truth over comfort. To live differently is not to rebel for rebellion's sake. It is to listen to the voice within when the world shouts its instructions. Courage, in its purest form, is not loud or dramatic. It is quiet, steady, and deeply personal. It is the courage to stand by your values when they are inconvenient, to follow your calling when it seems uncertain, to embrace your imperfections instead of hiding them. The world rewards imitation, but the soul finds peace only in authenticity. Each time we betray ourselves to fit in, we lose a little of our vitality. Each time we honor what feels true, even in small ways, we grow stronger inside. The courage to live differently is also the courage to let go, to release the need for constant validation, to stop performing for an audience that may never understand you. The good life does not depend on applause, it depends on alignment. When your choices arise from integrity rather than fear, your path may grow lonelier, but also lighter. There is freedom in not needing everyone to agree with you. There is clarity in walking your own way, even when the road feels uncertain. Living differently also means accepting that you will not always be understood. People may question your choices, judge your pace, or doubt your direction, but wisdom grows in the soil of solitude. When you stop chasing approval, you begin to hear your own thoughts clearly. You discover that peace is not found in being right in the eyes of others, but in being real in your own. The courage to live authentically is the courage to trust yourself, your intuition, your rhythm, your truth, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. To live differently is also to embrace imperfection. The world worships images of flawlessness, but true beauty lies in honesty, in the crack that lets the light in the vulnerability that connects us all. When you stop striving to appear perfect, you begin to experience life as it is, messy, unpredictable, yet profoundly alive. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is the choice to move forward in spite of it. To live differently is to keep moving with an open heart, even when the outcome is uncertain. Every era has its quiet revolutionaries, those who choose simplicity over status, purpose over popularity, being over having. They may not make headlines, but they change the atmosphere around them. Their calm presence reminds us that there is another way to live, slower, gentler, more honest. They are proof that the good life is not something prescribed by the world, but something crafted from within. In the end, to live differently is to live fully. It is to refuse the numbness of conformity and to reclaim the vividness of being human. The courage to live this way does not come all at once. It grows, breath by breath, choice by choice. Each act of authenticity strengthens it. Each moment of honesty deepens it. And as that courage grows, life itself begins to feel freer, richer, and truer, not because it has changed, but because you have. Chapter 15. A Life Well Lived. At the end of all reflection, all striving, and all seeking, the question remains, what is a life well lived? It is tempting to measure it in milestones, in achievements, possessions, or moments of recognition. Yet, when time begins to thin and the noise of ambition fades into memory, few remember the trophies or titles. What lingers are quieter things, the kindness we showed, the love we shared, the peace we found within ourselves. A life well lived is not about how far we traveled or how much we gained, but about how deeply we were able to live, how sincerely we were able to be. The good life is not perfect, nor is it always easy. It carries its share of sorrow, doubt, and loss. But the person who lives well does not seek to avoid these things. They learn to hold them gently. They understand that joy and pain are threads of the same tapestry, each giving texture to the other. They learn to see beauty not only in light, but also in shadow, in endings as much as beginnings. They find meaning even in the moments that hurt, knowing that every experience, pleasant or painful, adds depth to the soul. A life well lived is one guided by awareness. It is marked by presence, by the ability to meet each moment as it is, without pretense or distraction. Such a life does not hurry, because it knows that nothing real can be rushed. It does not cling, because it trusts in the rhythm of things. It does not envy, because it recognizes that every life has its own pace, its own purpose, its own quiet perfection. The person who lives well becomes like a still lake, calm on the surface, deep beneath, reflecting the sky with clarity and peace. What defines a life of worth is not what we accumulate, but what we give. To live well is to leave traces of gentleness in the world, to make even one person's burden lighter, one heart more hopeful, one corner of existence more luminous, because we were there. Our legacy is not written in monuments, but in memories. The smile we caused, the understanding we offered, the forgiveness we gave, these are the invisible marks of a good life. And perhaps the truest sign of a life well lived is gratitude. When we can look back without bitterness, when we can say, "It was imperfect, but it was enough," then we have understood the essence of peace. Gratitude softens the edges of regret and turns even the smallest moments into treasures. It teaches us to see that every day, every ordinary morning, every shared silence, every breath, was part of the miracle we were given. A life well lived is not a story of grand victories, but of quiet constancy. It is the story of someone who tried, who learned, who loved, and who, through all the uncertainty of being human, continued to grow. Such a life does not need applause, for its reward is already within it, the steady warmth of a heart that has known compassion, the clarity of a mind that has sought truth, and the serenity of a soul that has made peace with itself. When that final moment comes, the person who has lived well does not cling or resist. They understand that all things come and go as they should. There is no fear, only acceptance, and a quiet smile that says, "I lived, I loved, I learned. I was here, and that was enough." The journey never ends. The journey toward a good life does not end. It only deepens. Each day offers a new beginning, another chance to live with awareness, to act with kindness, to see the sacred within the ordinary. We do not reach a point where everything is resolved, where peace is permanent and clarity unshakable. Life continues to unfold, mysterious and unpredictable, calling us again and again to practice what we have learned: patience, compassion, gratitude, balance. The art of good living is not a destination but a way of being, renewed with every breath. There will always be moments of confusion, times when we forget, when we fall back into haste or worry or longing. But even that forgetting is part of the path, for it invites remembering. Each return to awareness, however small, is a victory. Each time we choose understanding over judgment, calm over chaos, we move closer to the essence of wisdom. The good life is not found by escaping imperfection, but by embracing it, by living fully in the midst of it, with an open heart and a steady mind. In truth, no one ever truly masters the art of good living. We simply keep learning, through love and loss, through stillness and struggle, through the quiet unfolding of time. Every joy refines us, every sorrow deepens us, and every act of awareness connects us more intimately with life itself. To live well is to keep walking this path with humility and wonder, knowing that every step, even the uncertain ones, leads us home. So, let the journey continue. Let each morning be a new invitation to begin again, to see the world with fresh eyes, to forgive, to appreciate, to create, to love. For in the end, the good life is not something we find. It is something we live, moment by moment, breath by breath, for as long as we are blessed to be here.